Imagine for a moment that the greatest spiritual secret of all time was never truly hidden, only overlooked. Imagine that within the teachings of Jesus, there existed a practice so profound, so transformative, that it could open what he called the gates of heaven, not after death, but within the living soul. Many buscadores throughout history intuited that behind the parables, behind the miracles, behind every whispered word spoken to his closest disciples, Jesus carregava uma técnica, modo de olhar para dentro, que mudava a consciência. And today, we will walk directly into that mystery. Think about how often Jesus spoke of the kingdom of heaven as something that was already among us, something that could be entered, experienced, awakened. Not a distant paradise, but a living state of spiritual perception. Why would he insist that many looked but did not see? What was this seeing he spoke of? Could it be that he was referring to a form of deep inner meditation, a sacred discipline encoded in his teachings, practiced in silence, and transmitted only to those ready to receive it? In this journey, you will discover how ancient Christian mystics, early desert teachers, and modern scholars of esoteric Christianity interpret the secret inner practice of Jesus. And more importantly, you will see how this practice can awaken within you a sense of divine connection that surpasses doctrine, transcends ritual, and reveals a truth capable of transforming the very core of your being. Stay with me until the end, because the final revelation is the most powerful of all, and it may change forever the way you comprehend the life and message of Jesus. Before we continue, if this theme resonates with you, subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and share this video with someone who is seeking spiritual understanding. Your engagement helps expand this journey to more seekers, and I promise that the revelations ahead will illuminate mysteries rarely discussed and deeply transformative. Now let us return to the heart of the story. Throughout history, from the writings of Origen to the reflections of the mystic Hildegard of Bingen and the studies of the theologian Rudolf Bultmann, many have argued that Jesus spoke in layers. The outer layer for those who stood in the crowd, the inner layer for those who dared to step closer, and a secret layer for those who were ready to awaken. These 3 degrees of understanding reveal that Jesus may have transmitted a method capable of aligning the mind with the divine presence, a method that echoes the contemplative practices of the Essenes, the meditative interior silence of the early desert fathers, and the ancient mystical traditions that surrounded Judea. This hidden meditation was not about escaping the world, but about perceiving it with a purified heart, an inner stillness that Jesus often described as the eye being full of light. Scholars like Elaine Pagels and Henry Corbin point to ancient texts that suggest Jesus guided his disciples into a transformative interior experience, one that opened intuition, expanded consciousness, and revealed the kingdom within. When he withdrew alone to the mountains or the desert, he was not merely resting, he was entering the deep silence where the divine voice becomes unmistakably clear. But what exactly was Jesus doing in these moments of solitude? Why did he insist that prayer should be done in secret, behind closed doors, in the quiet space where only the Father sees? And why did he teach that the pure in heart would see God? This seeing, this inner vision, has led many mystics to believe that Jesus practiced an ancient contemplative discipline, a meditation that dissolves the noise of the world and opens a living connection with the source. Reflect on this for a moment. Have you ever sensed that within you there exists a deeper self, a sacred silence waiting to be discovered? Do you feel that the teachings of Jesus might contain more than moral guidance, that they might contain a spiritual technology for awakening your divine potential? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your reflections may inspire others seeking the same truth. As we continue, we will explore the signs hidden within Jesus' words, the clues found in ancient manuscripts, and the interpretations of great scholars who dedicated their lives to understanding the mystical dimensions of his message. And remember, the greatest revelation will come near the end, when we uncover how this hidden meditation opens not only symbolic gates, but a living experience of the kingdom of heaven within the consciousness of the seeker. This is only the beginning of our journey, and what lies ahead may challenge everything you thought you knew. As we move deeper into this mystery, imagine walking through the ancient deserts where the earliest followers of Jesus sought solitude to emulate his inner practice. These men and women believed that Jesus did not merely teach ideas, he transmitted a state of consciousness. The Desert Fathers describe this state as entering the inner chamber, a place within the heart where the divine presence becomes tangible. According to the theologian Thomas Merton, these early mystics preserved echoes of a contemplative lineage that traced back to the hidden prayer Jesus practiced in silence. Consider the many moments in Scripture when Jesus withdrew alone to pray. He ascended mountains before dawn, remained in solitude at night, and often moved away from the crowds. Scholars such as John Dominic Crossan argue that these narratives are not mere biographical details, but deliberate indications of a sacred discipline. They reveal a pattern. Jesus consistently stepped away from the noise of the world to enter a dimension of inner stillness. In these moments, he was not asking for blessings or reciting memorized words. He was awakening his consciousness to the presence of the Father within. This understanding becomes clearer when we examine the teachings that emphasize inner vision. When Jesus said that the kingdom of heaven was within, he did not speak metaphorically. According to the historian Bart Ehrman, this phrase reflects a mystical worldview in which divine reality is accessible through inner transformation rather than external rituals. His message pointed toward an interior enlightenment, a revelation perceived through contemplative awareness rather than intellectual understanding. He invited his listeners to perceive a reality already present, but hidden beneath the turbulence of ordinary thought. Think of the powerful statement, "If your eye is full of light, your whole body will be full of light." Many mystics interpret this not as a reference to physical sight, but to the single interior focus attained through deep meditation. The idea of the single eye appears in various mystical traditions, from Judaic wisdom to early Christian contemplative writings. Scholars like Gershom Scholem have noted that this inner eye symbolizes the awakened consciousness capable of perceiving divine truth. Jesus' words align with this symbolic tradition, suggesting that he guided his disciples toward a similar inner practice. Imagine yourself listening to Jesus in a quiet moment, away from the crowds. He speaks of the Father in secret, the door closed, the hidden place where true prayer happens. What is this secret place? Mystics such as Teresa of Avila described it as the innermost chamber of the soul, the very center where the divine spark resides. Early Christian texts like the writings of Evagrius Ponticus speak of a prayer beyond words, a stillness where the mind enters silence and the heart perceives the divine directly. These descriptions mirror the patterns Jesus lived: silence, solitude, interior focus, and the awakening of the inner light. Why were these teachings not offered openly to everyone? Scholars often point out that esoteric knowledge, by its nature, requires readiness. Elaine Pagels notes that early Christian communities preserved layers of meaning. Because deep spiritual truths cannot be grasped simply by hearing words, they must be experienced through practice. Jesus taught multitudes, but he initiated only a few into the mysteries of the kingdom. This initiatory dimension appears throughout his parables, where hidden truths lie beneath simple stories, waiting for the seeker whose heart is prepared. This leads us to an intriguing question. If Jesus practiced a hidden meditation, how did he transmit it to his closest disciples? Some researchers believe that his instructions were embedded not in explicit formulas, but in symbolic language. The heart must be pure, the eye must be single. Enter the secret room. Seek first the kingdom. These statements, when taken together, form a coherent, contemplative map. They point toward interior stillness, unified attention, purity of perception, and direct communion with the divine. Reflect for a moment. Have you ever sensed that beneath the surface of prayer, there exists a depth you have not yet touched? Do you feel drawn to the idea that Jesus taught more than words, that he taught a way of being, a path of inner awakening? Share your insights in the comments, and let us explore this together. As we continue unfolding this hidden lineage, the next part of our journey will explore how ancient manuscripts, mystical interpretations, and the experiences of the early disciples reveal the structure of this inner practice. We will approach closer to the heart of the mystery and uncover how Jesus opened the gates of heaven, not as distant promises, but as a living experience accessible within the awakened soul. The most powerful revelation of all is yet to come. As we advance into the deeper layers of this mystery, imagine standing beside the disciples during the intimate moments when Jesus revealed truths not spoken to the crowds. These moments were not about public teachings or moral discourse. They were encounters with a living spiritual force. According to the scholar Geza Vermes, the earliest followers of Jesus believed that the essence of his message was an inner transformation that awakened direct knowledge of the divine. This knowledge was not intellectual, it was experiential, something felt in the depths of the soul. Many ancient manuscripts suggest that Jesus guided his disciples into states of profound silence, where the noise of ordinary thought dissolved and a higher awareness emerged. Texts such as the Gospel of Thomas, studied extensively by Elaine Pagels and Marvin Meyer, highlight sayings that point unmistakably to an interior awakening. When Jesus said that the kingdom is spread out upon the earth and people do not see it, he was describing a reality accessible only through altered perception. This altered perception is the hallmark of contemplative practice, a shift from external attention to inner illumination. Consider how often Jesus used language that speaks directly to contemplative experience. He said that the pure in heart will see God, that only those with eyes to see can understand, that the kingdom belongs to the childlike. These phrases are not simple metaphors. They describe the qualities required to enter the inner state he cultivated: purity of perception, awakened vision, and a return to a childlike openness free from rigid mental patterns. St. Augustine, one of the most influential Christian thinkers, taught that the heart becomes the eye that sees God. This idea resonates with the transformative interiority Jesus practiced. Imagine the disciples observing Jesus during his long nights of solitary prayer. They saw the serenity that radiated from him, the clarity of his words, the authority with which he spoke of the Father. They understood that what he experienced in the silence was the source of his power. According to the theologian Marcus Borg, Jesus embodied a mystical union with the divine, and his teachings were invitations for others to enter that same union. He did not present himself as a distant figure to be worshipped, but as a guide leading others toward the same inner realization. This brings us to a crucial element often overlooked. Jesus frequently spoke of opening, entering, or receiving the kingdom, not waiting for it. These verbs imply an action of consciousness. To open the kingdom is to awaken the inner senses. To enter it is to shift from ordinary awareness to spiritual perception. To receive it is to allow divine presence to permeate the heart. Early mystics like Gregory of Nyssa described this as the illumination of the soul, where the seeker, through deep contemplation, encounters a light not of this world. Their descriptions echo the transformative states found in mystical traditions across cultures, suggesting that Jesus participated in a universal inner path. Let us reflect on a powerful moment. Jesus stood before his disciples and said that the gates of heaven were not locked against humanity. Instead, they could be opened by those who understood the path. Scholars such as Karen Armstrong point out that this language mirrors the symbolic vocabulary of ancient mystical schools, where gates represent thresholds of consciousness. To open them is to cross into a higher state of awareness. Jesus, through his hidden meditation, demonstrated this crossing and invited others to follow. Pause for a moment and consider this within yourself. Have you ever felt that there is a doorway inside you, a threshold you stand before but have not yet crossed? Do you sense that deeper truths await beyond your ordinary thoughts and emotions? Share your reflections in the comments. Your voice enriches this collective exploration. As we approach the core of this journey, the final part will reveal how the hidden meditation of Jesus becomes a living practice for the seeker. We will uncover how the ancient wisdom he embodied can be applied today to open the gates of heaven within the consciousness of anyone willing to walk the inner path. The final revelation is the most powerful of all, and it may transform the way you understand your own spiritual potential. Everything has led us to this moment. The conclusion will illuminate what until now has remained veiled. As we enter the final stretch of this exploration, imagine yourself beside Jesus during one of his quiet retreats into the wilderness. The air is still, the world hushed, and he steps into a depth of silence so complete that it seems the very fabric of reality softens around him. This silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is the doorway he taught his disciples to approach, a threshold where the gates of heaven begin to open. Scholars such as Raymond Panica describe this sacred state as the meeting point between the human and the divine, a space where the seeker becomes aware of the presence that Jesus called the Father. To understand the hidden meditation of Jesus, we must look closely at his teachings on the heart. Over and over he pointed to the inner life as the true temple of the divine. The theologian Matthew Fox notes that Jesus placed radical emphasis on the transformation of the inner world, urging his listeners to cultivate purity, forgiveness, compassion, and unwavering attention. These qualities were not moral instructions alone, they were prerequisites for awakening spiritual perception. In the contemplative traditions, this purified heart becomes the vessel in which divine light is reflected without distortion. Imagine Jesus guiding his closest disciples through the process of interior awakening. He teaches them to quiet the mind, to let go of judgment, to remove the noise of the world from the center of their attention. When he says that the kingdom is like a pearl of great value, he is pointing to the inner treasure discovered when consciousness turns inward. When he tells them that the truth will set them free, he is speaking of liberation from the illusions created by unexamined thoughts. According to scholar John O'Donoghue, this liberation opens a sacred clarity through which the divine becomes unmistakably present. This is where the essence of the hidden meditation becomes clear. Jesus was inviting humanity to experience a direct communion with the divine, not mediated by rituals or institutions, but awakened in the stillness of the heart. His teachings reveal a spiritual method woven into simple words that carry profound meaning. Enter your inner chamber. Close the door. Pray in secret. These actions point toward withdrawing the senses, calming the restless mind, and entering the inner silence where divine presence is revealed. This is the gate Jesus spoke of, a gate not made of stone, but of consciousness. Think of the moment when Jesus declared that the kingdom belongs to those who become like little children. Many mystics interpret this not as a call to childishness, but as an invitation to return to the natural state of wonder, openness, and purity that precedes the layers of conditioning accumulated over a lifetime. The contemplative master Henri Nouwen wrote that the childlike heart perceives the world with an uncluttered clarity, seeing beyond appearances into the essence of things. When Jesus invites his followers into this state, he is guiding them toward the inner posture required to experience the divine directly. Now pause and reflect. What would it mean for you to open the gates of heaven within yourself? Not as a distant promise, but as a lived experience. Have you felt moments of profound peace, flashes of insight, or an inner knowing that seemed to arise from a place beyond thought? These moments are glimpses of the inner kingdom Jesus spoke of. They are invitations calling you to explore the depths of your own soul. Share your experiences in the comments, because your journey may illuminate the path for someone else seeking the same truth. To truly open the gates of heaven, the seeker must follow the path Jesus demonstrated: silence, contemplation, purity of heart, and a sincere desire to know the divine. This path is not reserved for mystics or saints. It is offered to anyone willing to step inward with humility and courage. The early Christian master Evagrius taught that if you desire to see God, learn first to calm your thoughts. The experience of divine presence is not achieved through force, but through surrender. Jesus embodied this surrender, entering a state of unity that revealed the Father not as a distant ruler, but as a living presence within. This is the final revelation promised at the beginning of our journey. The gates of heaven are not external structures waiting to be opened after death. They are thresholds within the human heart. They open when consciousness turns inward, when the mind becomes still, and when the seeker aligns with the divine presence already dwelling within. Jesus did not point us toward a distant paradise. He guided us to the inner kingdom accessible in this life here and now. This realization changes everything, for it means that the path he walked is a path each of us can follow. As you carry this knowledge with you, remember that the hidden meditation of Jesus is not a lost practice. It is alive, waiting to be awakened within anyone who dares to enter the silence and seek the truth within. The way is open. The invitation is eternal. And the kingdom, as Jesus taught, is already within you. Before we close this journey, allow yourself to feel the weight and the beauty of everything you have uncovered. Imagine walking beside Jesus once more, not as a distant figure from history, but as a living master of inner transformation. Picture the calmness in his presence, the unwavering clarity in his gaze, and the silence that surrounds him like a sacred mantle. He is not teaching doctrines, he is awakening awareness. He is not pointing toward the heavens above. He is guiding you to the heavens within. Consider the countless seekers across the centuries who touched this inner truth and were transformed by it. From the early mystics wandering through barren deserts to the contemplative scholars of the Middle Ages, many discovered that the deepest teachings of Jesus were not found on the surface of scriptures, but in the quiet spaces between the words. The historian Jean Leclerc once wrote that true spiritual understanding is born in silence, and it is this silence that Jesus embodied so profoundly. In his hidden meditation, he was entering the sanctuary of the soul, a sanctuary he assured us we each carry within. Now imagine standing at the threshold of your own inner sanctuary. The noise of the world fades behind you, and a stillness begins to rise from the depths of your being. This stillness is not an absence of sound. It is the presence of truth. It is the same stillness that Jesus entered when he withdrew into the mountains. It is the same stillness he encouraged when he said to close the door and pray in secret. And it is within this stillness that the gates of heaven begin to open. Many ancient teachers describe this opening not as a single moment, but as a gradual unfolding. The mystic Gregory Palamas explained that divine light reveals itself gently to those who prepare the heart through contemplation. At first, it may appear as peace, then as insight, then as a subtle expansion of awareness. Over time, this inner light becomes a guiding presence, illuminating the path ahead with a clarity that transcends ordinary understanding. This is what Jesus demonstrated through his life, the gradual unveiling of divine reality within the human soul. Consider what this means for your own spiritual journey. You are not merely hearing a story or learning an idea. You are being reminded of something your soul has always known, but may have forgotten. The true kingdom is not a destination, it is a state of consciousness. It is the awakening of the divine spark placed within you since the beginning of time. And when Jesus said that the kingdom is at hand, he was declaring that this awakening is available now, in this moment, to any heart willing to seek it. Pause and breathe deeply. Let your awareness settle into your chest, into the quiet rhythm of your heartbeat. Imagine a light there, faint at first, then growing brighter. This light is the same light Jesus spoke of when he said that the eye must be full of light. It is the same light countless mystics described as the inner sun. This light is the presence of the divine within you. As you become aware of it, even for a moment you are stepping across the threshold of the gate. You are touching the living kingdom he revealed. Now reflect on how this teaching expands into daily life. The hidden meditation of Jesus is not confined to moments of solitude. It becomes a way of living. It teaches you to look at the world with purified perception, to respond with compassion, to remain centered even amid chaos, and to see through the illusions that cloud ordinary awareness. The theologian Richard Rohr often says that contemplative vision allows us to see from a place of union rather than separation. This is precisely the vision Jesus cultivated, a vision rooted in the awareness of divine oneness. Imagine how your life could transform if you embraced this path fully. Imagine making decisions not from fear but from inner clarity. Imagine facing challenges not with anxiety but with quiet strength. Imagine walking through the world knowing that divine presence moves within you. This is not an unattainable ideal. It is the natural outcome of the inner practice Jesus demonstrated. The gates of heaven open not through effort but through surrender, not through striving but through alignment with the truth already alive within you. And now, as this journey comes to its close, let the final revelation settle gently into your heart. The hidden meditation of Jesus was never meant to remain hidden. It was meant to be rediscovered by every generation of seekers who dared to look beyond the surface and listen to the silence beneath the words. It was meant for those who understood that the greatest mysteries are not written in books, but engraved in the soul. The gates of heaven are already open. They have always been open, but they open inward, not outward. Jesus did not give humanity a doctrine. He gave us a doorway. He did not offer a distant hope. He offered a living experience, and that experience is waiting for you now, in this very breath. As you step forward from this moment, carry with you the truth that has been revealed. You are not searching for the kingdom. You are awakening to it. You are not traveling toward the divine. You are remembering it. And the light that guided Jesus is the same light that now calls you inward. Walk through the gate. The kingdom is within you, and it has been waiting for you all along. Thanks for looking.